Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this webinar today called Peer Support Strategies for Kinship, Foster, and Adoptive Families in Tribal Communities. We know you are all very busy people with very full days, and we really appreciate you taking the time to attend this webinar and learn about peer support and how you can incorporate it into your tribal child welfare system. My name is Britt Cloudsdale. I am with the AdoptUSKids Family Support Team, and I'll go ahead and introduce our presenters, Mary Boo and Elisia Manuel. Mary Boo serves as the Executive Director of the North American Council on Adoptable Children and as manager of the AdoptUSKids Family Support Team. She has many years of experience in researching, writing, and training about state, tribal, and private support services for resource families. Mary, would you go ahead and say hi to everybody so they know your voice?
I sure will. Thanks, Britt. Welcome, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. And we also have Elisia Manuel. She is the founder of Three Precious Miracles, a group that helps Native American foster youth find permanent families and stay connected to their culture. Elisia is an experienced foster parent and leads support groups for tribal families in the Gila River Indian Community in Arizona. She identifies as Hispanic and Native American and is the proud adoptive mother of 3 children. Elisia, would you say hi to everyone so they know your voice?
Hi, everybody. I'm Elisia.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Before we get started, I'm going to go over some very quick housekeeping slides here. So this webinar is designed to be 90 minutes long, which includes time for questions that you could submit by typing into the chat pod of your GoToWebinar control panel. I will be monitoring the questions throughout the presentation, and I will voice them to the presenters as they come to a natural pause in their presentation. So if you submit a question and it isn't immediately asked, please know that I'm not ignoring you for sure. I'm just waiting for them to come to a natural pause in the conversation. Please also use this functionality if you're having any technical difficulties or anything like that. We will chat with you separately offline and try to help you. Your line will be muted throughout the course of the webinar, but we do hope that you will participate via chat questions and also in several poll questions that we have planned throughout the webinar to help us get a sense of who's in the room and how you guys are operating within your system. There are also resources available in the handouts pod that I would encourage you to download before the webinar is over. We've included a PDF of these slides that you see in front of you in case you'd like to refer to them later, as well as some other AdoptUSKids publications that we thought you might find helpful. We are recording this webinar and it will be shared with you. It will also be posted publicly on the AdoptUSKids YouTube channel and on the AdoptUSKids page for professionals. And finally, please take a moment at the close of this webinar to evaluate this session. You will receive an email from AdoptUSKids Evaluation, and we really hope that you will it'll take about 5 minutes to complete that evaluation. We greatly value participant feedback, and we regularly use evaluation data to improve our future events. So thank you in advance for taking the time to do that. I will also just take a minute here to go over who AdoptUSKids is. There we go. Okay, so briefly, I just wanted to share that AdoptUSKids is a national project of the U.S. Children's Bureau. The project is designed to raise public awareness about the need for foster and adoptive families for children in the public child welfare system, and it is also designed to assist tribes, states, and territories to recruit, engage, develop, and support foster and adoptive families, including customary adoptive families, relative caregivers, and permanent guardians. So the webinar falls into that second portion of that mission. In addition to our national adoption recruitment campaign, our national photo listing, and our adoption and foster care information exchange, AdoptUSKids also offers capacity building and engagement services to tribes, states, and territories that are in need of system-specific assistance or on any of the topics within our mission. We also have a family support team, which I'm a part of, that offers webinars like this and other resources to the field that guide and encourage systems to build and enhance the support services available to resource families across the country. And last but not least, we also offer minority professional leadership development for current and emerging leaders of color in the field of adoption. If your tribe is interested in receiving any assistance from AdoptUSKids, please do reach out to us. Our contact information is at the end of this presentation. And with that, let's get started by talking about the goals of this webinar. All right, so we plan to discuss the support needs of kinship, foster, and adoptive families within tribal communities and how specifically peer support can address these needs. We're also going to discuss how investing in peer support can help tribal child welfare systems achieve overall system goals. We will provide examples from the field that demonstrate how peer support can fit into your tribal systems. We're really excited to have Elisia here to talk about her specific organization and the work she's doing in her area. And we're going to provide some specific strategies, some concrete strategies for tribal systems and agencies that are serving tribal families to invest in peer support and understanding that resources are limited. Okay, so as we start, I think it's really helpful for us to understand who is in the room. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll, and if you would please take a moment to answer to the best of your ability one of these selections. So if you would please select the one that best describes you. The options are I'm a tribal child welfare professional, I'm a state county child welfare professional, I'm a private agency child welfare professional, I'm a peer support leader, or other. You don't fit into any of those categories. So if you would take a moment, we'd really appreciate that so that we can help tailor the presentation to who we have present here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. Okay. Wow, it looks like we have some pretty even smattering here. We have folks from tribal child welfare systems, from state or county systems, and private agencies serving those systems. So that's, I'm excited to see that, and I'm really so glad that you guys decided to join us here today. Thank you so much. And with that, Mary, I will hand it over to you to get us started.
Great. Thank you, Britt. I want to talk just a little bit about the support needs of resource families. And again, this is information that most of you probably know, so I'll go kind of quickly here. But we know from the research and from experience that trauma, loss, abuse, and neglect can have lifelong effects on a person's brain, behavior, relationships, and their physical and mental health. Children who face these early challenges struggle with trust and attachment at times, and often learn coping strategies that they need in those early environments that don't always serve them well when they're in a safe, healing home. For relative caregivers in particular, shifting family relationships can be an important place where they need support. Moving from being an aunt to a parent or a cousin to a parent affects the entire immediate family, but also the entire family system. And many caregivers need help to handle the challenges of those shifts. We hear a lot about families feeling isolated. When they're raising a child who has challenging behaviors or serious health issues, the parents can feel really alone. Other parents may not know what they're going through, may judge them when the child is struggling. And for kinship caregivers in particular, they may be parenting again when all of their friends are enjoying retirement or occasional grandparenting. So isolation is something that support needs really one that comes up a lot. And then we want to talk a little bit about vicarious trauma, which is those who are caring for children who've experienced trauma sometimes develop their own problems, almost as if they're living the trauma themselves. They can lose sight of their own values and beliefs and develop a more negative view of the world. And finally, the one we want to highlight just quickly is the difficulty navigating systems. And we know this can be a huge issue for caregivers in foster care, kinship care. They have to access systems to meet their child's often more difficult needs. They may be dealing with physical, mental health issues, as we talked about, educational challenges, courts, particularly for kinship caregivers, and more. And again, when we're talking about tribal communities, there's often multiple systems because they may be involved in some, tribal court or tribal social service systems, as well as those at the state or the county. And so caregivers often struggle to navigate between those systems. Those are some of the needs. I'm going to turn over to Elisia for a little bit more.
All right, hello everybody. So I'm going to be talking about the need for cultural connection and engagement with tribal communities for non-Native families that are caring for Native children, additional needs for cultural support and connection, and then the education to assist navigating overlapping systems between state, county, and tribe. So for families in tribal communities, there's many of challenges that Native youth experience while in foster care. Native culture is so important to our people, and being able to continue to provide experiences and opportunities for our children and families is so imperative to keep that culture connected. While parents and caregivers are likely to experience the same disconnect that Mary mentioned of the isolation, they also need to understand how valuable and sacred cultural needs are for our Native children in their care. This becomes especially important when a child is placed in caregivers that are outside the tribe or that are even non-native. Tribes normally try to do their best in placing children within their own tribal members, but as we all know, that doesn't always happen because of the lack of licensed Native homes, and this is just nationwide. When children are separated from their culture, foster parents would then really have to find additional supports to ensure that they can successfully maintain kids' connection to their community. So, as Mary mentioned, families have to navigate a complex system, and that's definitely relevant for children, Native children, because there's also that next step. So, for families working with tribal communities, have additional challenges to navigate that system of overlapping the tribe and also the state. They may have to go to the state for some services and the tribes for others, and additionally, sometimes the county, depending on where they're living, for those resources. And, to be honest, depending on the collaboration, sometimes isn't that great. I know when I first became a foster parent, I was working with the state ICWA and tribal ICWA workers. I wasn't given a brochure or listing of resources that were available to really help me. And, I was lost and didn't know which caseworker to really call and ask those questions. And that's, an example is my kiddos, contacting the state worker didn't have resources of all the tribes. The state of Arizona has 22 different tribes, and there was no listing. Each tribe is different, and each community is different, and they have their own cultural values. So it's so important, and I always tell families to keep that culture connected. It's really important to contact that tribal entity so that they know what to immerse that child in for that specific child. And I'll go ahead and turn it back over.
Thank you, Elisia. So given all of those challenges that we talk about, and first, as we talk about challenges, I also want to say, of course, and Elisia can speak to this as a caregiver, a foster parent, adoptive parent, that we know the joys and the wonder of being foster, adoptive, and kinship caregivers are there too. So I don't want to focus too much on the challenges, but that's what we're here to talk about, is why people need support. So how can systems meet families' needs? There are obviously a number of different services. We'll just touch on some of these here. There's obviously the training that people get before they become a caregiver. There's ongoing training, and should be, whenever possible, great to offer child-specific training when a child is identified for a family, and to connect people with the training that if this child has a particular disorder or challenge, to give training particular in that. We know another important support service is navigation. We talked about some of that system navigation a moment ago. Advocacy, the same thing, especially in places like schools where children may be struggling with learning disabilities or with being behind in school because of their early life experiences. And as Elisia mentioned, a referral for services, having somewhere there who can help direct people to the services that are available in their community, whether it's the tribe or outside the tribe. Case management is another type of support service. Obviously, there's basic case management that all children in foster care have, but there can be enhanced case management even after adoption or customary adoption, where you're continuing to help families who have higher needs address those needs and build their strengths. There are events like respite, camps, retreats, cultural events, other things that bring families together, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Many families and children in foster care and kinship care need therapeutic services and crisis support when behaviors escalate that families don't know how to deal with. And then material support, including providing maybe clothes, furniture, even daycare, other financial support can be a very important support for many families in foster care, kinship care, and adoption. And the final one we're going to talk a lot about today is peer support, and that is support for parents from other parents and for children and teens in care from others who are in care. And we're going to talk about why that's important and how that's a really great strategy to meet some of these needs that we've talked about. We also say that, but peer support can be built into any of the others as well. So if you hire staff with lived experience, or you have volunteers who are caregivers, or people who were once in foster care adoption themselves working as case managers or as advocates, then you're providing that peer support even as you're offering these other support services as well. We're going to do another quick poll here. Just trying to get a sense of who is doing what now. So this poll is, are you providing opportunities for peer support for tribal resource families? So if you can select those options. And again, I'll talk more soon. You'll see we're listing a variety of types of peer support, and we'll talk more about each of those in a little bit. We'll give it just another couple seconds. You all are purchasing well. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And so it looks like, again, so the social events, cultural events is the most common, and then parent support groups, a few of you doing mentoring and peer liaison. So it's great. We are seeing that people are offering peer support. Although again, we have 55% either not offering services or not sure. So again, that sets the frame that we hope that what we're going to share with you today will help you build those services if you're not offering them, and maybe add some enhancements if you already are. And now I'm going to turn it back to Elisia.
Alrighty, thank you. So on slide 12, we talk about the peer support for the parents, caregivers, children, and teens. Spend time with others with similar lived experiences, and then making those connections to peers normalizes the challenges and decreases the feelings of isolation and stress. So I just want to say, as Mary mentioned, there's many forms of support that are necessary for families to thrive. But peer support can be especially a valuable tool for tribal communities and families. The support group method works to address the many multicultural components for the navigation needs of cultural connection. To quickly define it, peer support, it's where parents, caregivers, children, and teens spend group settings with others in the similar situation, whatever form of peer support it takes for them. It can help to normalize challenges and emotions for families to make connections with others who share the same lived experiences. These relationships between the groups can provide helpful insights for navigating systems, assessing services, and addressing children's needs and behaviors, and can decrease feelings of the isolation and stress for all members of the family. For children and teens, spend time with peers can help them develop friendships and reduce their own feelings of isolation that they have or living with without their birth parents. Peer support can really address the support needs for the whole family. Thank you. Support services are more effective when provided by someone with the lived experience, which I'm sure you know, which matches the family firsthand knowledge we're going to talk about. So when support services are offered by community peers, it enhances the quality of support and makes the service more effective and impactful. These support systems increase trust and sharing, and it provides personal growth and stimulates peer feedback to improve listening and empathy skills for each other. Because of these peer caregivers give firsthand knowledge of what families experience, and what they've lived and what they're currently going through, they're able to relate. They know the challenges and rewards and develop respect and appreciation for individuals with similarity experiences. Families that I have found that have the firsthand experience become the expert, and they know where to go for the services in the community. I have found that families can provide advice and insight about what to expect in the near future and what programs to go to. Peers can be the influencer and the encourager on who to connect with in the community to seek assistance. Support services from our peers and our community members are more authentic and valued, is what I found. And because they are hearing it from someone that's actually been there and going through what they're going through. I've had many grandmas come to our support groups and feel very comfortable and being able to talk to one another because they're raising their grandchildren, and they're able to share about tribal community resources and how to really access them. Thank you. So next, I just want to talk about the informal support. Supports grow from more formalized peer support, and then, you know, families are the experts of their own needs. A really great thing about peer support in Native communities, that it's actually traditional practice for Indigenous people to use support groups as a natural support. We as Natives find it very important for us to reach out to our families for guidance and support, such as calling our grandmas and grandpas, our aunties and uncles, because we feel like we're all as one family. However, we have what's called talking circles, peacemaking circles, or healing circles that you may have heard of. Traditionally, many Native American communities have used the talking circle as a way to bring people of all ages together for the purpose of teaching, listening, and learning. These informal groups grow to be very supportive and therapeutic that you can also provide in your own community. I have found that peers have been reaching out to each other because they have established this trust in our circles. Talking circles process is a unique approach that can be used to spark multicultural awareness while fostering and strengthening community bonds and relationships. This can be especially helpful for families living in smaller communities, as it brings peers together to expand the informal support networks for everyone in a traditional way. I consider parents and families to be the experts of their own needs. I have found that caregivers are best suited to inform our system about the gaps that exist. So in my situation, I'm a huge advocate to bridge the gap of kids and being provided cultural opportunities to stay connected, because caseworkers sometimes weren't aware of the resources, and the tribes didn't realize that it was such a huge gap that we were missing. So 3 years ago, I actually started a multicultural event for foster parents and kids to all attend yearly, and it has made such a huge impact in families all around us. And I'll go ahead and turn it back over.
Thanks, Elisia. And if everybody is anxious to learn more about what Elisia is doing, don't worry, you're gonna hear a lot more about the wonderful program that she offers there at Three Precious Miracles. But before we get there, I want to talk a little bit about, we've talked about the value of peer support. Now let's talk about the different forms that it can take. First, one that most people think of are support groups, and these can be for the caregivers or parents or for the children and teens themselves. And to remember that the children and teens also need to connect with their peers because they may feel isolated. I didn't talk about that earlier, but they often may feel isolated or have struggles making friends. And so support groups often meet monthly. They provide opportunities just for people to get together and for caregivers to share information, ideas, and emotional support with one another. Mentor programs also can be for both caregivers and for the young people. With parents, it usually means connecting a newer parent with a more experienced parent or caregiver who can provide tips and insights and help them develop their trauma-informed parenting techniques, ways to understand children's behaviors and to understand that you want to think about the why behind the behaviors. For young people, it's most often an adult mentor, someone who was in foster care or kinship care. Buddy families are very similar to mentors, although these are where families are typically more equal. So they may be matched because they have children with similar needs or ages. And again, it's not one person providing support to the other, it's mutual support between the buddies. I talked earlier about navigators and advocates, and sometimes those are provided by peers, for example, during kinship navigator programs. And this is where they help people get information and assistance, working through systems, finding out where to get additional support services. Advocates help parents address their needs and challenges with agencies. And again, we talked earlier about, for example, advocating with schools to make sure the child has the support in place to succeed there. Other forms of peer support include online support, which can be through private Facebook groups, which operate just like support groups, except they're in real time and people can get the support whenever they need. And they don't have to get childcare or drive anywhere to go to a support group. There are email listservs and other ways that parents can connect with one another and again, share information, provide support at a time when it works well for them. Social activities are a great way for peers to get together and connect with one another, especially for the children. There's not the pressure of you don't have to sit at a support group and talk. You can really just get to know each other and have something fun to do. We talk about cultural events as well, where people get together and do things that are specific to the tribe or to the child's culture. It can be recreational activities. And finally, another form of peer support is respite partnerships. And these can be informally done where people just connect with each other at a support group and trade respite, or you can actually have a respite co-op where your organization trains people to be respite providers and then they make arrangements with one another. Anyone who's been trained can do respite for one another. So those are some of the forms of peer support. And we'll talk a little bit later about how different groups may be employing some of those options. Before we get there, though, we're going to do one more poll. And this poll, I'm going to preface by saying systems often think a lot about finding families and maybe not as much about supporting. So we're kind of curious in your system, where do you invest the most resources? Is it in recruitment? Is it in training and development of families or support or somewhere else? I'll just give it another little bit here. I'll share the results. So I have to say I'm quite excited to see that a lot of people are investing in support services, because that isn't necessarily what we see everywhere. We know there's a need to recruit families, and so people tend to invest there, but it's great to see that a lot of people are focused on support. We're going to talk a little bit more about why that's important. If I can get my slide to advance. So one of the things that peer support can do, and Elisia and I both talked about this a little bit, is it can help you achieve your tribal child welfare goals. Like other systems, tribal child welfare systems are challenged to meet the complex needs of families with limited resources. We know everyone is trying to do more, trying to do so many things with limited time, money, and staff. And with so many needs and so many things fighting for attention, it can be really difficult to figure out where you should dedicate resources. As a result, many places are investing in recruitment. We know there's a crisis in many states, and tribes in particular are interested in recruiting families so that children can remain within the tribe and within the culture. And so that's even more pressure on a tribal system than on other systems to recruit families. But what we know is that you need to pair recruitment with support in order to meet the overall child welfare goal of ensuring that families are successful and children have, successful thrive. So we want to pair recruitment with support services. If you don't pair support with recruitment. You may recruit families who don't stay in the system and may leave within a short period of time. And when families do leave, this obviously has negative consequences for the children and for your system. Children may have placement disruptions. They may be re-traumatized as a result of moving again. And then all of the investment that you put into the recruiting families is lost, and you have to start over recruiting more families. So we really want to emphasize the importance of thinking about support and recruitment together, and that'll help you find the families that you need and keep the families. Another obviously important child welfare goals we talked about is child well-being and success of these families. And we've talked about this, that there's a really positive impact of peer support. And I'm going to go quickly because we've kind of talked about this before. Parents and caregivers learn from each other. They can become better parents, more successful parents. Children do better when their parents do better. We know that these peer support services can connect children to their culture and to their tribe and help them learn about their traditions. Families can, when families feel supported and are supported, they're able to make it through crises. They've seen other families who've been through similar things and made it out on the other side successfully. They're much less likely to leave. And if a child leaves and moves to another home, they're more likely to take another placement. And then finally, one of the things we know is that one of the best recruitment is word of mouth. A family that is a success will show other families that they can do it, and they'll be more likely to say to other people, you know what, you should try foster parenting. It's really something important, and you can do it, and you're going to get the support you need. So again, we want to make clear that peer support is an important part of thinking about your big picture goals. And now I'm going to turn over to what I suspect most of you want to hear about all along is Elisia's program, 3 Precious Miracles.
Thank you, Mary. I'm really excited to actually tell you about 3 Precious Miracles. I started actually fostering for Gila River Indian Community in 2012. Me and my husband, Tecumseh, we took in two little brothers that were living in our community youth home that needed a home. And I remember it clear as day. Caseworker called and said, "Hey, we found your file after 3 years of being lost." And that was very, shocking to me. But we got the boys. And 3 months later, we received a call from the state ICWA, and said, we have a 5-day-old baby that needs a forever home. So here we are. Within 4 months, we had three baby boys, 3 little boys. Well, just a few months after that, we received our first little girl. So in a matter of 6 months, we became parents to 4 children. They were 2, 1, and then I had 2 4-months-old. My 4-months-old are 8 days apart. My daughter, Precious, is born on Valentine's, and my son is born on the 22nd. So we became instant parents. The children came with nothing, and I was just shocked that there was no resources available. The nearest place that helped foster parents was actually 2 hours away from the community, from the tribe. And that's when me and my husband, we realized that there was such a huge need for resources to support Native youth. We established an organization that we call 3 Precious Miracles, and it's named after our kids, Tecumseh, Precious, and Micah. There are miracles. We started it out of our home, and I started telling my friends and family, stop throwing your things away. Give them to me. Don't give them to the thrift store. I'll wash them and clean them and give them out to families, because there's such a huge need. So we provide basic necessities for other families that are in similar situations that we've experienced, like clothes, shoes, because as you know, as caseworkers and people of the community, kids in foster, they don't come with a luggage full of stuff. They don't come with drawers full of things. They come with what they have available or what's on their back. So we're able to provide those items as it is. So clothes, shoes, backpacks, hygiene items. We've been able to partner up with different organizations that have gifted us with donations to provide for individuals. Last year, and this organization is run on donations, volunteerism, some small funding from the state. but it's really pure love from my family that really helps out. We also help foster parents and grandparents with opportunities to provide to Native youth to know more about their culture. We sponsor several events throughout the year to assist families wanting to be involved in culture engagement throughout the state. So the state of Arizona has 22 tribes. We've probably touched the lives of 13 different tribes here in the community, which is huge. In October last year, we hosted our first powwow for children in foster care and their families. We had over 200 people attend this amazing event. In April of this year, in April, we'll be hosting our third annual Royalty with Miracles event. It's a bowling event where we bring in Native American royalty throughout the state, and they get to spend time with the children in foster care, the families. They get to bring their whole family, so it's just not the foster child or the Native child. We want to embrace the whole engagement of family. And you know, the organization is my heart. It's really, you know, I'm so thankful, and I'm so glad that I can share it with you and been able to share it across the state with other tribes. So support groups for grandparents, foster parents, and being able to provide material support. We've created a small network of local grandparents and foster parents that come together for support groups and events that we've hosted. We've put together an Easter barbecue event, give out Easter baskets. We have fun games that we play for the whole family to enjoy. Material support, when it talks about the tribe, we've actually made a really good relationship in referrals over to our organization. My sister-in-law is an aged out foster youth, so she aged out of the system and she volunteers her time to come and run the office. So I will tell you, it's no longer in my garage where I started it several years ago. Now we have a small office space on the reservation in our community. So she goes there every other day, and she's able to serve families that get referred over from our social services office, our crime victim services, our police department, elderly services, even our local workforce development office. They see families that are on TANF or SNAP program, grandparents that are needing resources, and we're able to assist them with those basic supplies, and we can, you know, provide that. And so with online support, we really try to research and help families that way. We do have a website. So, you know, if anybody's interested to learn a little bit more about what we're doing, you're more than welcome to do that. I would love to be able to share a little bit more with you. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about the navigation help.
Elisia, could I ask you, I'm sorry, could I pause you really quick and ask a question that came in?
Absolutely.
Could you talk a little bit about, it sounds like you've connected with lots of different tribal communities within Arizona. Can you talk a little bit about how you did that, and how you established yourself as a, you know, as a place that people in tribal communities knew that they could refer folks to? How did you connect with all of these different tribes?
Sure. So I'm huge on social media. I will tell you that. I have a Facebook page that's called Three Precious Miracles. Last year, I was put on the appointed to the DCS advisory board for the state. And I've actually contacted agencies myself. I contacted tribal offices. I've contacted council people, just really being out there on the ground and saying, hey, you know, this is what we've gone through. We've noticed that there's a gap in the system of providing cultural engagement. What is it that you provide? I did a survey with foster parents, and their biggest need was culture engagement. So once I let tribes know that, you know, foster parents that are living in the city that are non-native are needing resources, we started putting together these cultural events from different tribes. So we had singers and dancers from different tribes, and then really the word just started spreading that Elisia has this foster group and helping Native families, because there was nobody like me offering this resource. I hope that answered the question.
Great, thank you. And I think that you're going to cover this in a future slide, but we did also have a question come in about funding, which I'm sure is a question on a lot of different folks' minds about how you're funding your work.
Right. We all want money, right? We're all laughing about that.
Correct.
So I'm going to go ahead and go into the navigation help, and then I'll definitely talk about the funding. So we received calls throughout the state and other states from foster parents that have Native children, and it was so crazy because they were just needing to know like where to go to have events, or can they cut their children's hair, where can they get them enrolled, and because the tribes are so there's so many departments. So do they call education? Do they call enrollment? I mean, we were just getting so many. So we do provide a lot of navigation help to help the non-natives. We've actually even contacted enrollment, had them send us the application and send it out of state to families. And for some reason, the disconnect of getting the child enrolled wasn't happening. We were able to provide that navigation for families. Our cultural connection giving project is something that we started last year, and I am honestly humbled and so thankful about this. I wrote a grant to Cook Native American Ministries here in Arizona, and they fund different projects. And we were awarded a $15,000 grant. And basically what that was is to create a culture connection. We have community members that donate quilted blankets to us, and with the funding, we were able to buy an embroidery machine. The embroidery machine then gets embroidered with the kids' name, their tribal affiliation, and it has like a symbol, logo. It has our information on there. Three Precious Miracles loves you. We wanted to really make sure that tribal affiliation and their heritage was put on these blankets so they never forget where they came from, because we found that a lot of kids were being bounced around, and we know it happens. But for me, we were hearing that families didn't know where to go or how to keep that culture connected, because a lot of tribes are different. Some value baskets, pottery, jewelry, there's so much, but what we wanted to do is to at least have that tribal name. So like my son, for instance, he would get a blanket that said Tecumseh Manuel, Gila River Indian Community, Sackatone, Arizona. So if he ever got bounced around, thankful he's not, because he's mine, he would have that blanket and he would know that I'm from Gila River. And so we're really thankful about that project. And we did get a grant for that, which was awesome. Cultural education and support for non-Native families raising children. So cultural education is very important. And I've found that we've had many non-natives didn't know what was appropriate for their child or really where to go. So like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we started doing multicultural events and contacting different tribes in the state and really trying to identify where these kids were coming from. So we would the foster parent would contact us and say, my child's Apache. Okay, we would contact Apache, and I would really reach out to my friends and say, hey, do you know an Apache dance group that would be willing to come to this event? We had Hopi dancers come out. We had Gila River basket dancers come out. So we really wanted to educate the whole family as a one unit so that they keep their tribe affiliated and the kids understand. And it was so spiritual. I have families that right after our first event were so enthused and so excited, and they wanted to know when the next one was. So that was just really important. And I do want to really highly suggest, and for parents and caseworkers, if you have a Native child, it is so important to keep that culture connected to children. And we do have an application online. You don't have to be in the state of Arizona. you can get on our website, you can apply for a cultural connection blanket and have that education as a piece of for your child. So advocacy, I'm going to go down to advocacy for the state of for ICWA unit. I was very fortunate to be able to work with our state ICWA unit because of the fact that I took in a couple children that were through the ICWA. So the state has its own unit that is the ICWA, and then they have separate units. So my caseworker, I actually met her, and I really wanted to dig in deep, and I asked her to meet with her supervisor and told her what I was doing, and gave her some brochures of what I was doing, and telling them basically, I'm willing to try to get other foster parents or encourage other foster parents to get involved. So now the state of Arizona just developed an ICWA foster recruitment team. And that's thankful through the ICWA and through our liaison of the state of Arizona, and really trying to encourage other families. So, if there's another foster parent that's out there that, really wants to get involved, I mean, I'm willing to help out any way I can. But I want to say that advocacy and just being out there speaking has been a true asset, and just calling people on my own time, because I'm a full-time employee too. I work and I run the organization, so that's what I do. So, for some reason I can't move this over. Okay, so here we go. Everybody wants to know the juicy stuff, right? Well, my husband would hate me to tell you, but I make him fund a lot of this in the beginning. I really, it was my heart, and this was really for my kids. So a lot of the things, like I said, we started this out of my house, so we didn't have a lot of expenses except laundry soap, because we had to wash everything. But in time, like I said, we received grants. So we received a grant from Cook Native American Ministries that I wrote for, and then I also received another grant from a Christian church that gave us a $5,000 grant. We received prevention funding through the state, which is awesome. The state of Arizona, I actually attended a conference, and I was talking to the person that ran the whole division of prevention, and she said, you know what? We don't have any tribes involved in councils, in prevention councils. Would you be interested? And it's not tons of money, but it actually has been able to provide a wide range of opportunities and events to provide prevention for families. So with our prevention dollars, we do several events in April for Child Abuse Prevention Month. So we have our Royalty with Miracles, which is funded through there. We do a lot of fundraising events. Like I said, in April, we're having a fundraising event. We were accepted for Global Giving. We wrote to them, and last year we raised about $8,000. And to me, $8,000 is, some people, they get tons of money, but that was so awesome. So fundraising, donations, prevention, and grants is really how we've ran the organization for Three Precious Miracles. And I think that's it. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mary.
All right, thank you very much. And I want to talk a little bit about, we talked here about funding, and I'm going to talk about some other program models. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about one of the things that is great about peer support is it's often one of the more affordable kinds of support for a tribe or state or county to implement. But it isn't free. In some cases, you can, have someone like Elisia who is their own champion and makes everything happen, but that's still, as she talked about, she's raising money and spending time grant writing. And so if she or others, again, not just about Elisia, but have the support they need, they can do those same services. And so as we've talked about, that's really valuable to invest in these because it is fairly affordable. I mean, Elisia and other parents like her who do this support can do a tremendous amount with a small amount of money. So we do just want to emphasize that peer support, it can be free to systems, but there should always be, but there are other ways that systems can support programs. They can fund them. They can provide space or food for meetings. They can connect with other funders. Anyway, just there are ways to think about this. I wanted to just touch on that before I went away to talk about these other programs. But I'm going to talk about a few other ways that people are doing peer support. And all the programs I'm going to talk about incorporate at least some element of peer support in the work they do. They all do much more than I'm going to talk about. And that's one of the things to think about as well, is that if you have another type of foster care support, relative support program, or post-adoption support program, does it have a peer support component in it? If not, it can be a great component to add. So first I'm going to talk about the Yakima Nation Kinship Support Program, which was started a few years ago when some relative caregivers went to speak to the tribal leaders and just told their story. And the tribe then invested in creating a kinship support program. And again, it had many elements, but the things that were peer support is it had monthly support groups for caregivers, so they were able to get together and support one another. And then it provided childcare so that children and youth were able to make connections with each other and learn from other kids in similar circumstances and participate in activities. The program also included dinner and social events. They went to theaters, NBA basketball games, fairs, swimming and skating parties, and rodeos, where again, as I talked about earlier, caregivers can connect with one another and really build those relationships that can keep them going when times get tough. And those events also acted as a respite if they needed a break from the sometime challenges that they were facing. And finally, the program had another peer support element on the youth side. They were able to send children and youth from the kinship group to participate in fairs, sporting events, and other activities that were part of the tribe's youth activity program. So again, the young people from the kinship program could go together and participate with other teens in the tribe, but also be with one another. And that's a really great elements of peer support that were part of that program. Next, I want to talk about the Mockingbird family model. And this program has been used across the country, actually across the world, including at Blackfeet Nation in Montana. And in the Mockingbird family model, there's what's called a constellation of 6 to 10 foster kinship or adoptive families that are identified, and they are near each other. And then there's one family identified as a hub home. And in the hub home is one experienced foster parent who doesn't have a placement right now. And they offer the rest of the families in that constellation training, peer mentoring and coaching, information. They provide respite care. They have monthly support group meetings. They host community events. They do navigation and referral and recreational and cultural activities. So this is quite a comprehensive program. There's pretty good evidence base on that it helps families do better and stay in fostering longer. And again, all of this is provided by an expert parent who has the support of their agency. Next, and again, I should have said that some of these programs are Native specific and some aren't. And so the Adoptive Foster and Kinship Connections program in Minnesota is a state-funded program for the entire population. It serves, clearly from the name, adoptive foster and kinship families. And the services include 30 in-person support groups for parents, many with a children's component. Several of those groups serve Native families. There are youth support groups, some for teens and some for children adopted transracially. And it has a list of about 13 online Facebook support groups, one on adoption, one on foster care, one on kinship care, others serving special populations such as LGBT parents, those who are parenting teens. And then there are 9 staff members who are adoptive foster and kinship parents who provide one-on-one peer support, including, through those online groups and the support groups, but also one-on-one helping people, find access resources, providing emotional support, advocacy. One of those parents is targeted to serve the Native community. The support that she provides includes, she's serving people across the state, so to get creative with technology, she does Skype calls to do support groups with caregivers in different communities. She travels regularly to several tribes and hosts in-person support group meetings there. She also serves families who are raising Native children, helping connect them with the tribe, as Elisia talked about that she does with 3 Precious Miracles. She also hosts social gatherings. She'll often go to a powwow and have families meet before and then attend the powwow together, so people are able to get together with one another while attending a cultural event. The next program I want to talk about is the Native American Youth and Family Center, which is in Portland, Oregon, and it runs a foster care support program, again, that does many, many things, but they have a really interesting peer support program that's called the Generations Project, and it's actually a housing project designed to support youth and their kinship, foster, and adoptive families. And they have identified they're serving about 40 people, and it's elders, foster parents, and prospective adopters. They live in the same housing complex. The elders volunteer to support the youth through tutoring and mentoring in the culture in particular. And then the families connect with one another and provide peer support while they're all living together. And that's a really interesting model of peer support and community development. Finally, I want to talk about Foster Adopt Connect, which is an organization serving families in foster care, adoption, and kinship care in Missouri and in Kansas. And like these other programs, they do many things, but they have 3 different elements of peer support, which I think people could incorporate into the programs that they're offering. First, they have family advocates who are designated to help families, caregivers resolve problems and reduce barriers facing them in the system. They help families develop a crisis plan so they're prepared if anything comes up. And they are actually available 24/7. So they have a phone that they pass around, so there's always somebody to be on call. And I know many people worry about that sort of crisis support being overwhelming, but they've found that not too many people need it, but when they do, it's a really great resource for someone to be able to reach a caregiver who knows what they're talking about at a time of crisis. Foster Up Connect also runs support groups across the area they serve, and they have some targeting special populations. Others are just based on the neighborhood or different times of day. And then finally, they have a mentoring program that I think is a really nice model. It's called Connect Class Rookies. And they create a group, and it meets both online and in person. And experienced foster adoptive parents work with new foster parents and relative kin caregivers, addressing any issues that come up. And so those new parents are within their first 2 years of placement, and they're in a group with each other and with some experienced parents who can provide support. And it's a great way to have a shared mentoring model, so it's not too much of a burden on any one person to be sharing information with others. So those are just some of the different ways that programs are offering peer support that can be adapted to different programs. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Elisia.
Hey, Mary, can I ask a question as we're doing that?
Of course you can.
Yes, good. So a lot of those programs incorporated some element of online support. We talked a little bit about Facebook groups or listservs earlier. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how to keep a Facebook group or the like private and safe in that context, and thinking about that these are people that are going to be sharing some particularly sensitive information in a public setting.
That's great. I can say a couple of things about that. And I want to first emphasize that, again, just as I said earlier, all of these programs take resources. And so Adoptive, Foster, Kinship, Connections, there are staff who monitor those online groups. And I can't remember if I said it, but they're serving more than 2,000 families. So there's a lot of posts and a lot of information shared. So the first thing I would say is that you do have to have somebody that you trust, and not just somebody. If you have an active online group, you need to think about who's going to moderate it and how. Those groups are secret Facebook groups, so people can't find them. They have to connect with the organization in another way. And I'd say one of the more important, moderation first. Second is having guidelines, and so that before people join a group, they have information on sort of what the rules of the community are. I mean, just as you with an in-person support group would have guidelines and shared norms, you want to do the same thing in your online groups, because people do, it is social media, and we know that people think social media can be a place to argue and debate, and you just have guidelines that explaining that it's like a support group. You have to respect one another. If you don't agree with something, it's okay to let it go. So those are the top 3 things I could think about. Again, keeping the group to be a private group or a secret group, making sure you have guidelines that people agree to, and then moderation, that you can't just set it up and let it go, because you really want to make sure people are getting good information and that they're getting the support they need, just as support groups need a facilitator and a leader, online groups do as well.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take it away and talk about tribal child welfare systems can sometimes access flexible funding streams, and then tribal systems may be less siloed, and then staff are more likely to be connected to the communities that they serve in tribal systems. You know, we've discussed the resources and challenges that tribes may face, but with that, I also want to discuss the strengths of tribes that they have within the child welfare system and within the community, and how these systems can kind of work together and collaborate so that we can include more peer support or support services. So as a tribe, you may have access to different streams within your community, and I'm talking about your community council, your elderly services, your tribal social services, or even if you have a casino revenue dollars, we have tobacco tax dollars. So there's different opportunities. I've been able to connect with our elderly services. They've purchased our bags for our organization, and creating those relationships has been pretty flexible in funding streams for the organization. Also, there's things that may work in a challenging situation, and we can kind of contribute, I would say, together and be more flexible with needs that children and families need. So we put on an event that the elderly were able to come to, the grandparents raising grandchildren, and we connected with our elderly services, and they bought all the turkeys. It was our community services. And so, you know, I'm going to say being connected with the community and having its different departments and programs that has made it, you know, really valuable to work together. I'm going to go to the next slide. Uh-oh, too far. Can you go back for me, Britt? To slide 27.
I'm trying.
Not letting me do anything either right now.
There we go.
So I'm going to go ahead and talk about, you know, to hire kinship, foster, and adoptive parents, and provide financial material support, just kind of like what I talked about, and, you know, in the existing peer groups and organization, and providing training tools in the emerging groups. You know, I want to say, you know, I'm an emerging group, and really just continuing to grow and making the organization more valuable for the community and even outside, since we serve the outside population. So as we make the case that we're talking about, and for you to incorporate peer support groups, or even utilizing talking circles, I'm going to tell you that talking circles are so important in Native communities, like I mentioned earlier, and in the tribal welfare system. They are used for many different aspects in the communities, like domestic violence, the domestic violence shelter, drug abuse. So, having these circles and cultural opportunities really engages that trust and relationship. So it's important to note that investing in a peer support doesn't mean that your tribe must manage every aspect of the peer support group yourself. You may choose to just implement any piece of that approach that we've mentioned prior. There's many ways that your tribe can contribute, invest in, cultural activities. The first, you can hire someone, a staff within your child welfare system to really coordinate that. I know just recently I've been advocating for several years now, and for the past 2 years in our tribe, we've put on a cultural event and there was never anything done before. So I'm just going to say hooray for the community, because now we have a cultural event for kids in foster care, and people are starting to realize that that's so important. You could share position openings with emerging parent group leaders, and provide resource packets to individuals, or help even recruiting qualified candidates. Volunteers are very, very important. I have some great volunteers that just come in and help with the organization where I don't have to do that. Do that. You could also provide, of course, we all want the money. You could provide the financial, or if you can't do that, material support. Like I said, connecting with different organizations and groups that can provide the bags, provide the meals, do drives, ask different groups in your community to do drives for you. I know at first, and I'll be perfectly honest, it was pretty hard to get the buy-in from the community, because it was like, what is she doing type of deal. But I want to say it takes time to develop those relationships, even as a person from the community, and providing for the community, and my kids being from the community, my husband, I had to develop that relationship. So yes, sometimes it takes a while to develop those relationships, and then they'll start giving you money. So it's important to do that. As an independent groups, usually are in need of additional supplies. So, like I said, the basic necessities are important. If you need help accessing existing materials, I'm gonna ask you to please reach out to Britt. I'm sure she has a whole Rolodex of resources. You can contact her at the end of this presentation, and she can help you, guide you with some existing supports in your current area. You can also organize cultural events, retreats for resources to families. Please feel free to reach out to me. I would be happy to connect you with somebody that, if you don't know anybody Native in your area, we can do that for you. Provide cultural engagement, the talking circles, and are going to be very valuable for you and the families that are affiliated with your support group. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. This thing does not like me and does not want to go. Thank you. So advocate to state and county partners to invest in your peer support and tribal families. We're going to talk about assisting peer groups, organizations with grant proposal writing and state funding, yay! And then partner with agencies outside the tribe that are already serving tribal families. So you can also, so for me, we talked a little bit about the Facebook group. I connected with a group here in the state of Arizona where we have over 1,900 foster parents in a secret Facebook group. And that was really my support, because the tribe didn't even have a support group for us. So these non-natives were actually my support until I was able to develop something. So You can advocate to the state and county partners to invest in your support group for the tribes. If you are aware of independent resources like myself or anybody else, I always encourage partnerships and creating those relationships so that you can serve tribal families. With TPM, it's always been important that it wasn't just the Native child. I feel like if you take in any race, a child is a child and you're a family. So it's important to have events together and bring in the outside all together as one. So you can also assist these peer groups in organizing fundraising efforts for the group. So I'm always, I guess I'm not a beggar, but I guess I'm kind of a beggar because I'm, always asking people for help. But you can make them aware, and for me, it makes people aware of what I'm doing. I found a really good friend of mine that assists me with grant opportunities that she's written for me, and really has helped me because she's seen the value of what we were doing. So grants are definitely really important. I'm not a grant writer at all, but I definitely am starting to understand the beauty of how to write them. You can brainstorm, and like I said earlier, volunteerism and getting your team together to help you fundraise ideas and collaborating together is truly important, and it will help you, your community, your families. I've had a lot of foster parents that say, I what can I do to help? Like I'm willing to help any way I can because this is for my child that I love dearly, my Native child. So it's been really, really great. Since tribes are best equipped to meet the needs of tribal families, highly encourage you to reach out to the tribe. Of course, you can reach out to the museum, the education department, the elderly. That's the biggest thing with our elders. They'll always tell you, we want our kids to remember their culture. So, reach out to the elders. I've had a lot of great elder discussions with our community elders that are willing to teach their O'odham language or willing to teach certain things and aspects to our children. You can provide these anywhere. So I've gone to a foster parent house and had a trainer come in and do a gourd class and talk to the foster parents, and it was very therapeutic for the family and the foster parent. Perhaps getting representatives from your tribe, that I'm going to say is so important. So I've been able to connect with our council members, our governor, just inviting them to the events to see, that there are parents coming out and being involved and what an impact you are making. So I would say, yeah, invite your community officials to your events with the non-tribal members, because to me it was so important to show our community that we have some amazing non-natives loving on our children. And they were, even my own family, they were so shocked, and I don't want to offend anybody, but my aunt says to me, did you see that white woman with our baby, our chubby baby? And I just laugh. So I hope I don't offend anybody, but it's such a beautiful thing. And I thank you. If there's any foster parents on here listening, I thank you for what you do for our children and our tribal families that you're serving. So again, partner up with whoever you can. And if there's any way I can get involved, please let me know. Reach out to me on my Facebook or email, and train, get tons of volunteers to help you with your organization or your peer support group. So thank you very much. That's all I have to say today. And I'll turn it back over.
Well, thank you so much, Elisia. We really appreciate your passion. Really comes through, and it's so it's infectious. So thank you so much for sharing all of what you've been working on. You've been working so hard, it sounds like, for a long time, and I hope that folks can take a lot from what you have shared. I'm gonna close us out today by talking about If there's any additional questions, please feel free to shoot them over now before we close out. I did also want to share some other resources that may be of interest to you. If you've not already done so, I would definitely recommend taking a moment to download the resources that are in the handouts pod, including these slides. And so I would definitely encourage you to check out the AdoptUSKids Professionals page. And in there you can browse different publications and different recorded webinars by topic. We've included some here that we think might be relevant to you, but there are more than this. These are just some samples for you. I will mention Support Matters is a lengthy publication that highlights many programs. We talked about so many great programs today, and this one has even more and more detail about a lot of the ones that Mary had brought up. So I would definitely recommend that you take a look at that. It is a wealth of information, and there's also advice in there about how to use this wealth of information, how to use this to improve your own system, what to do with this vast wealth of information. So the other three that are listed here are briefer. They're tip sheets. They're much shorter. They're designed to be brief and to be a quick read, and they provide some concrete strategies to use in your everyday work and to improve your system. So we are also always publishing new resources. So for example, the final bullet on there is something that we just published last month. It's integrating family support from inquiry throughout post-placement. And so we are always sending new publications to the website, so please do check that out. I also wanted to make sure folks were aware of some recorded webinars that are available on the For Professionals page, as well as our YouTube channel. And it does get to, a lot of folks we had some talk of Facebook and questions about Facebook. We actually have a recorded webinar from last July that specifically talks about Facebook groups and how to use those for family support after placement. So I would definitely encourage you to check that out. A lot of folks have questions about if I set up a support group, how do I make sure folks come? And if I'm making sure folks come, how do I make sure that the group is effective and well run? And so we have some past webinars that we've recorded that are available whenever you want, that I would definitely encourage you to check out if you're thinking about starting a support group or you're wanting to improve your support groups. They have a lot of information in there on how to do that effectively. As we close, I did want to make sure, that folks were aware of our contact information. Again, my name is Britt. I am the Family Support Coordinator for AdoptUSKids. I also included Tracy Surginian's name and contact info here. She is the Director of Capacity Building and Engagement. And so if your tribe is at all interested in capacity building services or in need of any assistance in any of the areas that we've talked about, peer support or otherwise, that fit into our mission, we would love to talk with you. And you should, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to Tracy to talk about what you might need assistance with. I've also included, if you're not already on our listserv, on our to get our newsletter, I would definitely recommend signing up for that so that you could stay informed about events like this or new publications that we have coming out, anything like that. I also just want to remind everybody again before you leave to please be on the lookout for the email that will be coming to your inbox. It may already be there from AdoptUSKids evaluation. We really value your feedback, and we take all of it to heart and use the data to improve our services and so that we can provide better services to you in the future. So with that, I want to say thank you so much to Mary and Elisia for sharing your expertise, and Elisia for sharing all of your lived experience with this and being that, you are an example of what peer support can look like and be when it's truly flourishing. So we really appreciate you spending time, and we appreciate all of y'all taking the time today out of your day to be with us and learn about peer support. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and have a great one. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Britt. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.